So 3 years ago, when I stepped foot into this pulpit on Christmas Day, I made a confession to the congregation who was gathered that day. I said that December 25th, 2014 was the first Christmas Day that I have ever been in a church for a worship service, much less to be a leader or preacher in such a service. And this morning, I have a similar confession to make. This is the first time in my career as a pastor ever preaching on the fourth Sunday of Advent. It's not my first time in church on the fourth Sunday of Advent, but it is my first time preaching. We always get images of Mary on the fourth Sunday of Advent because we reach a final week of preparation for the birth of Jesus. This year, in year B of the lectionary cycle, we get readings from 2 Samuel and Psalm 89 talking about the Davidic covenant, the promise that God makes that someone from David's line or lineage or family will always be on the throne of Judah. And God keeps that promise. Sometimes the kings messed up and they had to be punished for their misdeeds among the people, but someone from the Davidic line always ruled God's people. This covenant extends to Mary, and it extends also to us because the angel Gabriel tells Mary in what we call the Annunciation this morning, that she will bear a son who will be named Jesus. He will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his ancestor David. He will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. We are inheritors of this promise from God that we call the Davidic covenant, and Jesus is the fulfillment of that covenant who brings it all to bear for us in the world. And the person that makes it possible for Jesus to fulfill all of that is none other than his mother, Mary. Protestants are slow to claim a love for Mary. The hymns and music in our service this morning speak of Mary's songs that she sings after the Annunciation this morning to God, and those are beautiful words from a person who is clearly connected and loved and united with God. But we Protestants like to shrug that off sometimes. I'm not quite sure why. Maybe we tend to think that it's too much like the Roman Catholic Church, or we get hung up on prayers to Mary, but we might do well to remember that Mary is an important figure in the life of Christianity, period. She's the Mother of God. The Greek Orthodox Church lifts her up and gives her the title Theotokos, which means God-bearer. Mary is incredibly important and oftentimes still overlooked. Martin Luther, the person that we as Lutherans hold in high esteem, is a person who expressed his full devotion and love for Mary. He was a huge fan, and in his writings he even writes this about Mary. She became the Mother of God, in which work so many and such great good things are bestowed on her as pass man's understanding. For on this there follows all honor, all blessedness, and her unique place in the whole of mankind, among which she has no equal. Namely, that she had a child by the Father in heaven, and such a child, hence men have crowded all her glory into a single word, calling her the Mother of God. None can say of her, nor announce to her greater things, even though he had as many tongues as the earth possessed flowers and blades of grass, the sky, the stars, the sea, grains of sand. It needs to be pondered in the heart what it means to be the Mother of God. And that's what this morning in Advent 4 is all about. It's all about pondering the promises of God, the mysteries of God, and what it means to be the mother, the bearer of God for Mary. Martin Luther loved Mary because she represented the typical pattern of interaction between God and humans. And not just interaction, but what we theologians call election. It isn't that Mary is the epitome of goodness or virtue or beauty or even her openness of serving God. No, for Luther, it was simply that God chose Mary to bear God's Son, the Christ child. And that's the surprising, shocking thing. God didn't choose some royal princess or member of a priestly family. God chooses a plain, insignificant young girl. Unless you think I'm being really mean or belittling to Mary, that's exactly her question of the angel Gabriel this morning. Gabriel says to her, "Greetings, favored one. Do not be afraid. You have found favor with God." And then he goes on to detail all of what she's going to do to bear Jesus. But she responds, "How can this be since I am a virgin?" And she starts to ponder, and she starts to take in all of these words. She, a simple girl, a teenager, not even married and not even knowing a man or having relations, is going to conceive and bear with God to bear the Christ, the Son of the Most High. "Why me?" I can hear her say. "I'm nothing grand or special. Heck, I may even still have acne, and you want me to bear the Son of God?" I don't know about you, but I've uttered those words. Okay, maybe not, I still have acne, and you want me to bear the Son of God. But I have asked, why me? What's so special with me? I'm seemingly a nobody, a guy who is blind with a fake eye, who wears an insulin pump to control his diabetes, and who has trouble believing in himself every once in a while. Why should God choose me? Why would God choose any of us, really? Nobody would ever have expected Mary to do this great thing of God. And see, that's exactly why Martin Luther loved Mary. Mary represents all of us who have no right to expect God's attention or love, but all of us who are surprised as heck to find out that God has chosen, elected, called, and dared to even look upon us with favor. The beautiful, awesome, and mysterious thing about this greeting of favor that Mary gets is a very important claim, because it is God entering into humanity, and it is God's covenant promise and commitment to see humanity in the parts of our being human that no one else would see. When we don't like what we see in the mirror, God doesn't see that of us. When others want to run around pointing their fingers in your face and telling you lies about yourself that you know aren't true, that's not what God sees. Maybe those things are there. Maybe those character defects live as a part of our consciousness, but what God sees is all of us, the good and the bad, and God really sees it and decides, even in the midst of it, to favor us and to regard us as someone special, even when no one else might agree. The gift of Mary this morning for our Advent lives of waiting and expecting and learning to look for God in the midst of everything is that Mary does represent all of us. And just like Mary, God says, "I see you, I know you, I choose you, and dang it, I love you." And maybe that helps us to hear, receive, and explain Mary's response. We don't know from our Bible reading in Luke, but I can almost guarantee that Mary was surprised, confused, and maybe more than a little bit frightened. But she eventually moves from "how can this be" to a profound statement. "Here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word." She's somehow caught up in all of this goodness and this graciousness from God that she receives God's invitation in joy, and she responds with acceptance and reverence. "Let it be with me." What Mary offers to us this morning is her role. Mary's role is to embody the characteristics of God in the world, and she does that. She will also give birth to God's very self, so that in Jesus, God would be revealed to the world. Mary's story moves us, as I said this week in our women's Bible study, from who we think we are to who God has called us to be, from observant believer to confessing apostle. In 3 short verses, Mary goes from being a peasant girl to a prophet, from Mary to the mother of God, from denial to discipleship. So as we hear Mary again this morning on this last Sunday of Advent, what I hope we hear is also the promise from the angel Gabriel. For nothing will be impossible with God. This is a story about the impossible becoming possible. This is the story of how God comes into the world, not in ways that we expected, but in ways that we need. God dares to look with favor on the people that no one else would see, and God dares to be born in the middle of unexpected places, people, and events. And because of that, God will never, ever leave us the same. Just watch. You'll see.